Ever wanted to learn how to make a basic traditional granny square? Stay tuned because in this episode of Knit for Brains, I'm going to show you how to do it. So today I'm going to show you the basic granny square, and I think it's a really good place to start if you've never made a granny square before, so you can understand how to work the corners and even how to change colors. As you can see in the sweater that I made, my Happy Scrappy Cardigan cowl, I used a lot of different granny squares. So this is a very basic granny square. You can make sweaters, you can make blankets, you can make these as big or as small as you want. So here's how it's going to work. Now, a lot of people, there's two ways to start a granny square. Some people will do a chain and then close it up, which is perfectly fine. I like to start mine with a magic circle. Reason being is that you can tighten the circle so there's not that hole in the center. I think it's probably one of the most versatile, useful stitches that I've learned. So to start, you're going to take your yarn, your tail, you're going to lay it across your index finger and your ring finger or your pointer finger, and you're just going to lay your thumb across it just to hold it in place. You're going to wrap it around the top of your fingers, and then you're basically going to cross it over. So you see where this X is? This is where you're going to start your magic circle. You're going to come under both. You're going to come up, grab a hold of the yarn that is over, and pull it through. Okay, so now you're going to have your loop right here, and then you're going to have your two working yarns over here. This is the key. See how they're crossed right here? This is really the key. Now to just set this in place, what I do is I just do a chain. So now you're going to grab a hold of your working yarn, the yarn that's coming out of your skein, not the short end. And I just pull it back so that I can make one small loop there. And now we're ready to work. Now the secret with this is the stitches that you put into your magic ring, you want to put them over those two yarns right here. So to start my granny square, what I'm going to do is a series of double crochets within this magic circle, and then I'm going to separate them with single crochets. So I'm going to do 4 sets of double crochets, chain 2 to separate them. So here we go. Now, sometimes it will say to start with a chain of 2, right? Which basically represents that first double crochet, which is right here. You're going to yarn over, come through. Remember, you're going to want to cross those 2 strands right there. Pull through. Now you've got the 3 loops on your hook. You yarn over, pull through 2. You yarn over and pull through 2. A very basic, simple double crochet. We're going to do that again, making sure that you do it over those 2 strands here. Yarn over, pull through, 3 strips on your hook, 3 strands on your hook rather, double crochet and pull through. So now I have 3 double crochets within my magic circle. I'm going to chain 2 to separate them, and I'm going to do an additional 3 double crochets right here. So 3 double crochets, and pull through. Now, notice as you work along this that your tail is going to get a little bit shorter. What you do at this point is you just start to pull it. See how it's closing up the magic circle? That's the key, okay? So we're going to do 1 more double crochet for this set, making sure I go over both strands. So now I have another 3 double crochets. I'm going to chain 2. And I'm going to do 2 more sets just like this. So now, before we close this up, you're going to see that I have 4 sections of 3 double crochets. There's 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we've got everything we need to close up our first square. From this point here, you're going to do 2 chains, and we're going to do a slip stitch into the first double crochet, not the chain, the actual first double crochet right there. And we're just going to pull through. Now a slip stitch is not a stitch. We pull through the yarn and then we just pull through again. We're not adding a stitch. So now we've got our square. Watch the magic. So now we pull this little tail right here and watch. And see how it closes it all the way up, making it a perfect square. So you just pull it nice and tight. This is why I prefer to do the magic square. You see how there's basically no hole in there? So if you're doing, let's say amigurumi or something where you need to make a circle, that magic circle is really great. It's very versatile because it will allow you to be able to make a circle without having to worry about anything coming through the hole. So that's why I like to do the magic circle. Now from here, we're going to change color into our next color. So here's how you do what we call an invisible Now to end the yarn, we're going to do what we call an invisible join. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my blue. Make sure you have sharp scissors, which those are obviously not. And I'm going to move into my next color. Now to do the invisible join, what you're going to do is you're going to take this tail and you're going to pull it all the way through and seal it off. So basically it's all off now. Now you can either do this with a darning needle or I do it with my crochet hook. I come in from the back, I grab a hold of this end piece, I pull it through to the very back, like so. And then from the back, I'm going to come in from the front, grab that yarn that is in the back, and pull it through. And so basically then you just weave this yarn back and forth into those stitches that you just had. And that's a good way just to bind off this yarn. And you don't have to go the whole thing. You don't have to do the whole thing. You can just go a certain distance and then cut it off. All right, so now we're going to switch into our next color. So I'm going to use this pink, some nice spring colors here. And you're going to chain into any one of these little holes that you've made with that chain 2 space. So I'm going to go into this one here, grab a hold of that yarn and pull it through. And then I'm going to do a chain here. And I'm going to do a chain 3, which is what I did in the first one, which is my first double crochet. Now I like to take the tail and bring it in with me to kind of use it up, but you can do whatever you want to do. Now from here, we're going to do 3 double crochets in each one of these chain spaces. And then we're not going to be chaining across. So watch, here we go. So we're going to come through, double crochet. So now we have 2, yarn over, double crochet. Now, because this is a corner, we're going to do a little something special. From here, I'm going to chain 2. So basically, in the first row, I made all my corners. Now from here, I'm going to chain 2 and do another 3 double crochets right here. Yarning over and pulling through. So there's 2. I'm going to do 1 more. There we go. Now from here, I'm just going to go over to my next chain space and do the same thing. Yarn over, go into that chain 2 space, pulling that yarn through, and I'm going to do 3 double crochets. So there's my 3. I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to do another 3 double crochets. And we're just going to continue that into these next 2 spaces. So as you see now, I'm coming around to the back to the place where we started. So I have my 3 double crochets here, 2 double crochets. I'm going to do 1 more here. And then again, I'm going to slip stitch into the first, so not the chain, right into that first stitch. You yarn over, you pull through, and then you just straight pull through. And now we've got our second, but you can start to see how the corners are coming together. From here, we're going to go ahead, cut the yarn, and move into our third color. And again, I'm going to do what we call that invisible join. So I just pull it through, and then I come from the back, or come from the front rather, grab the yarn in the back, and then just pull it back and forth and through. Okay, and again, you can weave these ends in. Sometimes I will go into the backs of the stitches right in here. You can see there. And I'll just grab a hold of this yarn, and then I'll just pull it on through. And then I can do it again right here. So it's really whatever you want to do. You can pull it through, you can cut it, just make sure that it's secure so that at some point down the road it's not going to unravel. And start to unwind your granny squares. Okay, so you have to do a little bit of cleanup there, but this is the second row of the granny square. All right, next let's move into our lavender. So basically, as you can see now, there's one extra little trick I'm going to show you, and then from then on, you just can change up, add colors, make this as big or as small as you want. Find my end. Aha. There we go. All right. I like to pull from the center typically, just because I think it's a little bit easier, and then the yarn doesn't roll all over the place, but it's really up to you. So now here is the last little trick to these granny squares. I'm going to go back into that chain 2 space just like I did in row 2. I'm going to pull this yarn through. I'm going to chain 3, which is starting, and then the 2 chains represent my first double crochet. I'm going to go in 3, so 3 double crochets total, so this is basically 2 more. Now I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to go back in and do 3 more double crochets. So this is basically making that corner. And what you're doing is you're making a really nice, tidy, if you will, corner, turning this into a square. And if you've missed a stitch, you can usually see because the squares look a little bit wonky. So this here is my corner. Now this is where it gets a little bit fun. Notice this hole here in the center. This is when I went in row 2, I went from this corner over to this corner. In this space here, you're going to do 3 double crochets, but that's all. Okay. Because if you went all the way over to the next corner, it would pull your square and make it a really weird shape. So I do 3 double crochets. Now I yarn over and I go back into that next corner, doing as I did before, 3 double crochets, chaining 2, and 3 double crochets. And you can make, once you get the hang of it, you can do 1 double crochet or 2 or 3 or whatever you want to do, depending on the style of the shape of the square that you want. So as you can see, I have 3 double crochets with chain 2 and 3 here, 3 double crochets just by themselves here, 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets here. Now we're coming around to that side space here. So again, we're going to yarn over and just do 3 double crochets right here, and this is it. And then we're going to go back into this corner. Oops. So there's 2. 3 double crochets into that side space. And then we're going to go into that last corner, 3 double crochets. 2 chains, the last 3 double crochets, and then we have that last chain space before we finish out this row. And again, we're going to slip stitch from this over to that first crochet, that first double crochet, which is right there. And we're just going to yarn over and yarn over. So you can see how the square is really starting to take some shape. I'm going to go ahead and cut this. I'm going to bring this piece through, pull it up, taking the yarn from the back, so I'm reaching around from the front with my hook. And again, you can use a tapestry needle if you want to. It's really up to you. Just a way to weave in the ends while you go, because it's going to be a real pain to do it at the end, to have to weave in all these ends. Okay, and I usually do it to there, and then from here, I will come around to the back, and then I'm going to take this yarn here, and I'm just going to weave it into these spaces here. It keeps them nice and tidy. It tucks them away, and you can't really find them. So I find this to be the cleanest way to go, but again, whatever works for you, as long as your yarn is secure and it's not going to come unraveled. This yarn I have is not very great, and it's sort of splitting, so we're going to come in here. And again, you could definitely do this with a tapestry needle. It might even be an easier way to get a hold of grabbing this yarn. And then we're just going to pull it through. Okay, so there's my square. Now I'm going to show you one more trick, and then from then on, I'm setting you free. You can do whatever you want because you'll understand the basic principle. So again, I'm going to go into that chain space. Always go into a corner space. I'm going to chain 2. So I've already got the 1 chain there, so that's 3. Going to come down. I'm going to do 3 double crochets. Chain 2. 3. Now you can see with the tail, I just sort of laid it down across the top of my stitches. That's also a good way to bind your yarn down so that it doesn't fray up and it secures. As you can see, I didn't pull it out of the center, which I'm not a super big fan of, but there, because it just rolls everywhere. 1 more double crochet for this corner. Now, notice that we now have 2 chain spaces here. This is where it's going to get interesting, because as this square grows, you're going to get more and more of these side spaces, right? So before we had the 1, now we have the 2. And next thing you know, I'll show you, we're going to have more and more each row. So we're going to do the 3 double crochets right here into that chain space. Three double crochets there, so now I'm going to chain 2. And that's basically it. Like I said, you can make this one big square, changing colors as you go, or you can make a whole bunch of squares and then sew them all together. So notice here how we filled in these 2 side spaces. Now notice we now have 1, 2, and 3. So for the next row, we're going to go into 3 side spaces. So we had the 1, the 2, the 3, and then we're going to just grow incrementally from there. Granny squares are so versatile. They are so in style now. You can make these into halter tops, baby blankets, purses, my sweater, my Happy Scrappy cow sweater, which I absolutely love. And so forth. So now we're coming back into that next corner. And like I said, once you get the hang of these things, they're so much fun. They're so easy. They're mindless. And yet you feel like you're really making something spectacular. When it's all done, to me, they can be lacy. They can be kind of feminine looking, but they can also be really playful. I just absolutely love granny squares. So for the people that think that they're dated or, like something that your grandmother did, oh, no, no, no. They are the stuff nowadays. They are the bee's knees, if you will. And if you look at any of the styles nowadays, the clothing styles, there are granny squares everywhere. I really hate coming off the ets outside of a skein. I really like pulling from the center. Then we're going into, this is the last side, so we've got those 2 chain spaces. I'll stay with you. Last one here. And once again, now we're going to slip stitch over to that first double crochet right there. Pull it through. Pull this last one through, weave in those ends, and we are done. So this is your basic granny square. And as I said, you can just keep adding rows and it'll just keep growing. The only trick, you always want to make sure that you put 2 sets of here I did 3 double crochets. Some people will do 1, so it really depends on your pattern, but I do 3 double crochets with a chain 2. Make sure you always put that in your corners, otherwise it's going to start to get a little bit wonky. All right, and then again, your side. So this is a traditional, basic granny square. There you go.